Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Episode. Today we're going to continue a series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. Some months ago I did a video where I talked about what I would love to see come to MiSTer in the future, and I'm doing a part 2 to that because there's a lot of love out there for some obscure consoles, computer systems, and in between, and the more we have on MiSTer, the merrier. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And also leave me a comment and tell me the one thing you want to see on MiSTer that is not currently here. Right off the top, there's been a lot of press with PC-FX lately. A friend of mine, Fixel, is making an optical disc emulator for it, and there have been some people poking at the hardware. Now, I absolutely love the NEC PC-FX, but I'm not trying to say it is a hidden gem console. Compared to the PC Engine, it's definitely a far inferior library-wise follow-up to that platform, but that doesn't mean there's not hidden gems on it, and that doesn't mean it wouldn't be great to have on MiSTer. Something like Zenki here is an absolutely spectacular beat-em-up that you should 100% play, even if it never comes to MiSTer. Check it out on BedDefend or otherwise, but I would love to play this in FPGA, and there's a reason why that is. Not just for the NEC PC-FX, but the CPU is shared with another console that I will be showing you momentarily. But this is the type of thing that would be perfect on a MiSTer. It is a lightweight 32-bit console that would be absolutely spectacular to see in HDMI, because the worst part about the PC-FX is that there really isn't an easy way to RGB mod it based upon the encoder that works within the system. And something like Team Innocent here, another great game that's basically Resident Evil before Resident Evil would ever exist. Unfortunately, it is in Japanese, but I have heard some rumblings of an English translation in the works. I'll let you guys know when and if that happens. But there's a ton of fun to be had on the PC-FX, and it's one of those pieces of hardware that so many people do not know about or have never experienced. So to be able to bring something like that to MiSTer would be absolutely spectacular. I know a lot more people would love to play it. A game like Zeroagar here, maybe not as good as the best shmups on the PC Engine, but it's still an absolute blast. It has RPG elements, and it's just one of those games that you should definitely experience. The other reason I'd love to see PC-FX in FPGA is because outside of burning discs right now, there's no way to play backups, and the CD-ROM on the PC-FX absolutely hates burns. When Fixel finishes up that optical disc emulator, will be great, but I still want to see something like this on MiSTer. I think a lot of people would have a lot of fun with it, but leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played PC-FX, if you knew about the console's existence. I would be curious, because I did a series on this a while ago, and I will leave a link in the description below. But it's just one of those consoles. It's one of the last 32-bit era systems that doesn't currently work on MiSTer, and I'd love to see it. Now, I told you that the PC-FX shares a CPU in common with another piece of retro gaming hardware, and that's going to be the Virtual Boy. Now, Virtual Boy is one of the systems I do not have in my collection, and that is because every time I put my eyes up against the visor, I get a splitting migraine. I don't care what people try to recommend to avoid that. It is just not a system I can play. But that doesn't mean via emulation there's not a ton of fun games to be had here, and if we get something like the PC-FX or the Virtual Boy, a lot of that code for the NEC V33 CPU could be shared between. And of course here, via emulation, I am turning the 3D parallax look off. It is not in two different colors, it is basically just black and white, and you can change that to any sort of color you would want. It would be great to see something like this running on a PVM or even on a 4K LCD upscaled via MiSTer. And it's one of those things, Virtual Boy hardware is quite finicky and it is delicate. A lot of the ribbon cables to the two eye screens are going to come apart. The glue is rotting on those. Basically every Virtual Boy is going to need a repair at some point in time. And I don't know why Nintendo didn't put all these games on the 3DS. It would have been the perfect system for it. But something like Jack Brothers here, it is an absolute amazing game, and it's only available on the Virtual Boy, and I would love to see something like that come over to MiSTer. And people could really play around with how it worked as well. You could basically take something on MiSTer and actually give it a pseudo 3D effect, and you could put on some glasses, even if they were the corny ones you used to watch 3D movies on in the 60s. I was not alive, maybe some of you were, don't know the age of everybody here, but I would love to see someone play around with that and attempt it if you could actually put on 3D glasses. Because this is what Virtual Boy emulation comes out as if you use that red and blue sort of split for your eyes. Looks terrible on screen, but it could look fun on MiSTer. And it's one of those things, we have basically every handheld game known to man at this point in time. We've got Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Wonder Swan. It would be great to get something like Virtual Boy over, even if I suck at Mario Tennis because I can't get the depth. I still want to be playing Virtual Boy games on MiSTer, so I do hope it happens in the future. But leave me a comment down below and tell me if you own a Virtual Boy. I would be curious. Now moving on to something that does work on MiSTer, I would love to see the Sharp X68000 core finished. That is not at all a knock on its current progress. It plays basically almost everything, some games with some bugs, but it's not a finished core, and it's not one of those things that's going to beat real hardware. Like I said again, not a knock on it, just the situation of the progress. But X68000 hardware is incredibly expensive, and X68000 software emulation, while quality, is a very difficult thing to set up, and most of the applications that do so are going to be in Japanese. I just want to be able to turn my MiSTer on and pretend it's a Sharp X68000 with no issues whatsoever. I did a video like 2 years ago on setting the core up, and while there have been some improvements since then, it is one of those things that's still one of those cores that is not quote-unquote finished. But there's such a deep library on the Sharp X68000, a lot of it that you can play on MiSTer today, and getting that 100% perfect would be so awesome to have. Because I love Japanese PC gaming, there's a lot of fun and a lot of exclusives here, and something like MiSTer saves you a fortune. If you want to buy a ready-to-go X68000 right now that's been recapped, you're probably going to be over $2,000. That's the other great part about MiSTer, is that it doesn't require you to go out and buy these vintage PCs that are an absolute mortgage payment as far as expense is concerned. And then there's the technical expertise to even get something like a solid-state SCSI device running on it so you don't have to use old hard drives. It is a very complicated system to own and to run, and I would love that to be easier on MiSTer, because you can always do a setup video to help people out. And of course on MiSTer we do have the MIDI emulation as well with the Raspberry Pi hat. Like I said, it is basically like 95% done. I would just love to see it hit that 100% completion mark sometime soon, so it can just be a finished core that people can plug and play, for lack of a better term, sit down and enjoy, because there's such a deep library on the X68000. If you own one, leave me a comment down below because I would love to hear about it. Now on the Japanese PC side, we have a PC9801 core, but there is nothing really going on as far as workable PC98 cores. There has been some work towards one, but it doesn't seem to have really gone anywhere, at least at the time of recording this voiceover. I absolutely love the PC98. It's got a ton of great platformers, but it's got a ton of atmospheric visual novels as well, some of which have been translated into English. This is one of the big three Japanese retro gaming computers, with the X68000 and the FM Towns being the other two, and I'm sure FM Towns will show up in a video in the future on a third part of what I'd love to see on MiSTer. But I absolutely love these visual novels, and I actually do collect them, hoping that they'll be translated into English someday just so I can understand what the hell's going on. I don't even know why I collect PC98 games that I can't read. It's just one of those things. I love seeing them on a shelf, and it's a fun time to hunt for them. But I do hope that PC98 comes one day, because there's a lot of games you don't require Japanese language knowledge to enjoy, and there's a lot of games that have gotten those English translations, and I will show you one in just a few moments. But stuff like Marine Filth here, a game that you're probably never going to hear anybody else mention on YouTube unless they specialize in visual novels, and it's one of those things. The graphical look, the overall vibe of PC98 stuff, I absolutely love. And something like Dead of the Brain here does have an English translation. Apparently it was done via machine, and it might not be the best in the world, but it's a lot better than trying to play it in Japanese, unless you happen to speak the language, and then you should definitely just do it that way. But because we have X68000 mostly done, and because there's a couple other Japanese PCs with absolutely incredibly deep libraries out there, I do hope PC98 does get finished one day for MiSTer. That way it's another one of those Japanese PCs that you don't have to actually import from Japan just to play games on. Trust me, I would know, shipping is not light. The only other thing that I would love to see in this video is somebody to take up the mantle for the PlayStation 1 core and try to get some of the arcade games working. I know Robert FPGA Zoomspass has said he's not really interested, and that's totally fair because he's already given us more than enough with the PlayStation 1 core, but it's possible somebody else could take up that mantle and play around with this. Because while some of the PlayStation 1 based arcade hardware is more powerful than a stock PlayStation 1, some stuff like the Konami GV right here is a stock PlayStation 1 just with a SCSI interface for the CD-ROM drive in a big metal box. But other things like Chaos Heat running on the Taito GNet, that is a more powerful PlayStation 1 as far as the clock speeds are concerned, but we already know based upon FPGA Zoomspass's 2X PlayStation core that you can in fact increase the specifications of the PlayStation 1 CPU and get it to run stable with improvements on MiSTer, which means that theoretically it is possible to get at least some of the PlayStation 1 based arcade games running on MiSTer, and a lot of them are arcade exclusives. You can't play Chaos Heat on the PlayStation 1. It just doesn't exist, and it's such a fun game. It is one that I would love you guys to check out. But there are so many fun PlayStation 1 arcade exclusives out there. I do hope one day we can play them on MiSTer. If it never happens, hey, we have MAME and original hardware, because this is just a dreams video. If things don't happen, I certainly won't be upset. But that is what I would love to see come to MiSTer in the coming year or so. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what isn't on MiSTer that you'd love to see, because we all have our own hopes and dreams out there, and maybe one day we'll all have our dreams met on MiSTer. But I'm not complaining about this project whatsoever. MiSTer has given us all way more than we could have ever expected, but when you get a lot of things, you start thinking, what else could I have? It's human nature, folks. Don't blame me for it. Short of that, I'll be back with another video next Thursday on MiSTer, and I'll have videos throughout the week. But yeah, I'll probably do a part 3 of this in like 3 to 4 months. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.